Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Talks Daily podcast. Now, I'm always thrilled to bring you insightful discussions on the latest in the tech world and how it's impacting businesses. And today I have the Chief Strategy Officer and General Manager of Security at a company called Kaseya on the podcast. And if you've not heard of them, they are a leading global provider of unified management and security software. And in today's episode, I invite you to dive into the fascinating findings of the Kaseya 2023 MSP Benchmark Report. Now, this report, which surveyed over 1,000 managed service providers worldwide, is offering insights into the key priorities for MSPs, such as automation, cybersecurity integration, and lots more. And I also want to learn more around the challenges of acquiring new customers in a world of intensifying competition and the increasing need for sophisticated security threat solutions. So together today, we will unpack the findings from the report, explore the growth of cybersecurity services, the role of automation in workload management, and the importance of integration in core business applications. And Mike, thanks to his vast experience and unique perspective, he will lead us through this exploration and shed some light on how Kaseya is helping businesses adapt to some of these industry trends. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Boston, where Mike is waiting to share his story. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Mike. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Great. Thanks, Neil, and thanks for having me, and thanks, everyone, for listening. My name is Mike Puglia. I am our General Manager of our security products and run strategy at Kaseya, an IT security and management company. I've been here for, coming up on 10 years. I've worn many hats. I've done everything from running products to, at one time, even running IT for us. And I've been in the industry longer than I want to admit, I think, publicly. I'll keep it at that. But some of my comments on arcane technology may make you aware that it's probably been well over 30 years.
Wow. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. I'm looking forward to finding more about everything that you do at Kaseya and where you're heading at the moment. But before we do, one of the big reasons I invited you on the podcast today was to talk about automation and a few other things as well. And the 2023 MSP Benchmark Report highlighted that automation is a key technology for every business right now. And maybe no surprises there, but can you explain how automation actually improves efficiency and allows MSPs to take on more clients? Because we hear about the buzzwords, but it'd be great to hear more about some of the value and efficiency that it brings too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, automation, right? I can go back those 30 years and say, do more with less, right?
Yeah.
And automation really isn't about necessarily the less. There's really, I think in the survey, it was about 90% of MSPs said automation was crucial to their business. And when you kind of peel that back, there were really kind of three factors in it. Number one, MSPs and really any service business, revenue is ultimately the most important thing. And you have, revenue minus cost equals profit. And the biggest cost for pretty much every MSP is people. And we don't want to get rid of people. And automation isn't really about cutting staff. Sometimes it gets a bad name about that. It's about, as you said, efficiency and productivity. So if my costs are linear with revenue, or worse, it actually gets, my costs go higher with more clients, then it's really hard to be profitable, right? If I have to bring on 5 more clients and I have to hire 5 more people, well, my ratio doesn't change. I don't get any scale out of it. And if I have to hire 4 or 5 more clients and bring on 10 more people, more clients could actually make it worse. So the first is, how do I scale the business? I take on more clients without having a linear relationship to the number of people. Second is about consistency. Can I provide consistent, high quality service? And its dependency really isn't on any one or two individuals, because that leads to churn. Someone does a good job, someone does a bad job. They don't have the same experience. And maybe a good analogy, or maybe not a good analogy, you think of your favorite chain restaurant or chain hotel. There are individuals that make that up, but there's certain levels of automation that I know if I go to this hotel, this is how I'm going to check in. This is the level of service I'm going to get. And while it doesn't replace the people, it augments them so you can deliver consistently. And last is really superstars. Everybody has, the superstar on their team, the one or two techs that are amazing that do it all. But when you're worried about, when you have that, it's amazing. But all that knowledge, all that work is tied into that individual, and they may leave for some reason. And then things change dramatically. I hear it from MSPs all the time. Our best tech left. We spent 3 months trying to figure out what they were doing. As an aside, I also see this a lot on LinkedIn with management consultants of, a lot of people saying, as long as they get the job done, I don't care where they do it or how they do it. It's about results. That's actually probably the worst management advice you could give, because as a business, that's great, but you don't know how they're getting those results. And in the end, you can't replicate it. And really, automation is about replication. What is a human doing? What are machines doing that I can automate? So things like automation that we're seeing people do with automation. One is simple things like automating actions on a ticket. If I do something, 80% of the time, my people take this action, automate that. Let them handle the exception. We've already seen it in the world of patching, Windows or Macs. You set up your automation in the MSP world in your RMM. You automatically run it. 98% of the time, everything's fine, and you let the humans deal with the 2% exceptions. What about onboarding customers? Takes a lot of time. You got to go set them up in Outlook. You got to set them up in Active Directory. You got to go set up their accounts in, Salesforce or whatever. Why do I have to have a human doing these things? Can I automate these things and let them deal with exceptions? So by far, automation is the biggest lever you have in a service business like MSPs.
And it's so refreshing to hear you say some of those messages there, particularly around busting myths around automation, costing jobs, etc. It's not that way at all. It is all about scaling, making the boat go faster. So does...
I was going to say it absolutely is. We don't look at I don't see MSPs looking to do, or any business that's really trying to scale, replacing people with automation. You hear a lot about that with AI these days and things like that. It's about leveraging your people and letting them handle the exceptions and work on things that can't be automated.
And of course, another big trend right now is cybersecurity, particularly cited as the top IT challenge that clients are expecting to face this year and beyond. So can you shed some light on the kind of cybersecurity threats MSP should be prepared for? Because I suspect this is an area that you're following very closely too, right?
Yeah, I am. I mean, you can't turn, the old book, Crossing the Chasm, right? Cybersecurity is cross the chasm because it's not just the IT people out there saying to the businesses, you need to do this, you need to do that. They turn on the news every day. It's mainstream everywhere. In fact, I think it was last year, there was one of the large breaches out there, and my local police department was getting so many calls which is strange, from just regular people saying, I think maybe, I've clicked on something. I forget what it was. It was actually not last year. It was a few years ago, one of the big Microsoft, consumer hits. And they sent out a reverse message to people saying, don't call the police department. And then there was some random reboot your computers, apply updates. And I'm like, now that the police department is getting calls, that's really crossed the chasm. And so we saw, the pandemic made it worse with everybody being from home. And we saw, I think it was about 70% of respondents in the survey said cybersecurity is their number one challenge. That was up 15 to 20% from year over year from 2022. So, why is it a challenge? One is expectations. Somehow, cybersecurity, and I think IT people see this, and MSP certainly see it. It's on or off. It has to be 100%, right? If you had a compromise or a breach, you must be horrible and doing something wrong. And nowhere else in life is everything, on or off or binary like that. If you think of cars, and I don't like using this, I'll knock on wood, I think karma, but, we have taken precautions with cars over the years. You used to have a seatbelt. Now you have a seatbelt and airbags and collision avoidance and crumple zones and all of these things. Yet we're not surprised when we hear somebody had an accident. How could that be? It's part of daily life. We understand we've lowered the risk, but the risk is not zero. So there's an expectation of zero. What we have done is made a big difference in the severity of a problem if you have it in cybersecurity. The car analogy, I'm now getting in you can't avoid all of it, but I'm getting in a fender bender as opposed to, totaling the car. The other part that we see is, regulations. They're all over the place. In Europe, GDPR was a big thing, and now there are different organizations and industry groups and so forth. So what do I have to do? And last, I'd say what is commercially reasonable? That's the term that I like to use. What's commercially reasonable to protect, some government military agency is different than protecting the accounting office. But certainly, even in the small to mid-sized business, if you go back 5 years, commercially reasonable was antivirus and a firewall. Commercially reasonable today is multi-factor authentication, endpoint detection and response, monitoring by a third party. You could go to the extreme and unplug from the internet, but that's not very, reasonable. So, we struggle with that. What should I do? But the good news is the survey result, it's the number one area for growth for MSPs. Every MSP is seeing this. It's the number one fuel, and it's the number one, the top 5, I believe, new services offered in 2023 and planned for 2024 around cybersecurity. So I'd say the takeaway for MSPs is it's an opportunity for you to make sure that you're differentiating yourself by offering a complete set of cybersecurity services, that we see a lot of people marketing themselves, leaning more into being a security provider as opposed to, where you're IT alone provider. So there is a lot of upside, both for the MSPs and ultimately for protecting customers. They need more services. They're getting more services. You are helping their businesses by providing it.
And I also think it's very easy to take for granted the fact that most people can work from anywhere, anytime now. But just 3 years ago, working from home was a huge privilege for the very few in most cases. And then from there, and doing that overnight at scale because of the pandemic, we progressed to hybrid working. And now there is some calls in certain places that want to bring people back into the office. There's a huge debate right now. And in the report, it showed that a notable dissatisfaction amongst both executives and technicians when it comes to work-life balance. So how can automation and better integration help maybe alleviate this issue? Because again, big talking point right now.
Yeah, it's been, I think IT industry in particular has always been a struggle where you're never going to, eliminate the emergency crisis situation, right? And we saw that, and I think everybody knew, but I think everybody on the customer side really maybe didn't have an understanding of how much their business is dependent on the underlying IT. You kind of take it for granted. Suddenly no one's in the office and you don't have technology. Most businesses couldn't exist. 5 years ago, a local healthcare practitioner, they had a, manila folder with your records on it, and all of that. Now they don't. It's all electronic. And suddenly if the electronics aren't working, they can't do anything. And so that's really, so since that time, burnout has been a really big thing. 70% of people in the survey said they worked several weekends or holidays unplanned. 50% said that they work more than 50 hours a week. And it's not sustainable for very long. And we see that with people. They burn out. We churn level 1 techs, out the door. And so there's really two ways automation can help. Number one is if you take an action, go and write down right now your top 10 things in your organization. If you take an action 80% of the time, where people do this over and over and over again, just the mundane part of it burns them out. That's what you can automate. If I get an alert of, in the IT world of, a system being slow, you look at the services. If one's running at 80% CPU, I restart the service 80% of the time. That solves the problem. Don't make people do that. Let it do it for them with the scripting and let them deal if it comes back up. Otherwise, you're just driving them, to leave. And, number two is, automate the daily life. And what I mean by that is everything can't be ad hoc. Otherwise, it just piles up. Have some processes in place, automate what you can, but have those processes. I'll go back to the superstars, and they do a great job, but they are firefighting all day long, and it's not, you can't make that repeatable if you don't have a process around it. And if you don't have a process around it, you can't automate that process. You can't automate something that's ad hoc. And so automation can really help. Sometimes we don't take our head, out of the fire to stop the fire. So sit back, go out. What are the top 10 things that you do, your company does every day, and say, can we automate those? And I guarantee you'll be able to find at least 3 to automate and do it within a month. And that'll take away, 30, 40% of these mundane tasks from people.
And if we go further down that rabbit hole or take a look under the hood at the technology that makes everything possible, poor integration remains a core problem for many MSPs still. So can you expand on the consequences of that, and also how at Kaseya you're helping address some of these issues too?
Sure. Sometimes integration and automation kind of get lumped in together. They actually are separate, right? I want to have the tool sets that I use really integrated. Because if you look at a daily life, I may get a ticket in my PSA. Then I go to my RMM to actually go work on that endpoint to fix the ticket. Then I leave that and I go to my backup to do a recovery. Then I leave that and go to my security tool to do something else. We came up with a name, we call it the space between. And probably 25% of your life in IT is caught in the space between if you add up the time. We have all these tools. They may, issue some what we call cosmetic integration where an alert pops up here or there, but I still have to bounce in between all of these things. And so that is a real time suck of doing things, and it also leads to errors. And so what we've tried to do is we have a platform that we call IT Complete. And IT Complete is a set of different suites that have different modules in them. So the RMM, the PSA, the backup, and so forth. And the idea is where it makes sense, we build deep workflow integrations to integrate that part of your life. And I'll give you 2 kinds of examples of what I mean. Little things that can make a big difference. And so my example is remote control. So I have a ticket. I got to go remote control to that machine. I then go into my RMM. I search for the machine. I remote control to the machine. I then need to log in with an admin password. So I leave. I go to my password manager. I then look for the password. I then cut and paste it over and I log in. So there's 20 or 30 seconds there of doing the space between on that one simple task every time I do it. So what we did is we built an integration so you can launch remote control right from the PSA. And we use our IT documentation product called IT Glue that it talks to the remote control. So right inside of the session, I can click the button and it will use the password manager and log me in automatically. So I kind of liken it to the heads up display in a fighter cockpit. Everything's there. I can see it. I don't have to be going between tabs and different products. So that's just one, we have 200 or so of these integrations. That's just one example. But if I could save you 20 seconds here, 10 seconds here, a minute 30 here, you get your life back. I think the important part of what we're trying to do, and you're seeing divergence in the market of people trying to build one product that does everything. And that's how we're going to solve integration. And just from my history, one product that tries to do everything is inevitably fails. It's too big of an ask. What we like in our approach to is, it's not the perfect analogy, but I've been using it for some time, so I'll continue. Microsoft Office. Many years ago, they made a decision that they weren't going to try to build one product that was a word processor and a spreadsheet. Who knows what that would have looked like? They built Word and Excel. And they said, each of these products has to be standalone and be best of breed and do a really good job. But I'm going to build some really great integrations that we don't even notice that we're using, in that, if a table in Word goes into Excel, or if I'm in Word, I click the button and it makes an Excel table between them. So they're better if I use them together. And if you go back, who was winning at that time? Now I'm showing my age. I had WordPerfect and Lotus 123. And if I wanted to, I'd have to take a screenshot of the Excel thing and then paste it into Word and into WordPerfect. A lot of people won't remember those products on this call, but that's what you did. And so they very quietly said, no, we don't want to build one product that does everything. It'll be a mess. Let's build best of breed, but tie them together with meaningful, deep integrations and get more out of them. And that's what we're trying to do for the MSP community with our IT Complete platform.
Love that. Such a powerful message, especially around the importance of marginal gains and how those tiny improvements can make a huge difference. And if we also look at the report, the top 5 services that respondents of MSPs intend to offer in 2023 all predictably fall under the cybersecurity umbrella, including things like identity and access management, security awareness training, and even dark web monitoring. So can you elaborate on why you think some of these services are so critical in today's threat landscape? And did that surprise you when you saw it in the report?
It's really moving fast. So as I kind of said, what was commercially reasonable 3 or 5 years ago no longer is commercially reasonable for a small business. Some of it's, or a lot of it's, been driven by regulations. They're now saying, you know what? Hey, if you're an international, global HSBC bank, you got to do all these things. The technology has come downstream and the regulations have come downstream to say, hey, even if you're a small business, you have to be doing these kinds of things. And so, one of the big things, if we go through what they are, so it wasn't overly surprising, the speed at which it's happening. What would normally have taken 5 years to kind of get adopted is doing it in 2 years. And MSPs are capitalizing on this opportunity, right? They answered the survey. They're rolling out and packaging these services, and it's benefits for them because they offer more services and get more revenue. It also greatly benefits the end customer because they're more secure. So a lot of it's been driven. We have a lot of tools and things around regulatory and compliance reporting was a big one. So most MSPs, without knowing it, are already doing this. They're getting requests from can I get a report from this? Can I get they're doing it ad hoc. Now actually packaging that up and saying, here's your GDPR report, or here's your Cyber Essentials report, tying it to it and making it a repeatable service. Identity and access management, been around. Show my age again. I used to walk around with, actually at one company, a Vasco token on my belt and an RSA token on my other side because we had different systems. Been around forever, right? Two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication, single sign-on will replace the world. That was in 1990, 5. Now it's a requirement. You can't get cyber insurance if you don't have two-factor authentication on at least your email systems, because passwords alone are no longer enough. So they have to do it. It's mandated. So that's a big opportunity for MSPs to manage it because it can be technically challenging. Dark web monitoring. Every day there's some kind of a news. There was another one that a whole bunch of records from a dental office, not a dental office, a major dental group earlier this week, got dumped 1 million patient records on the dark web. So how do you monitor that for your organization, that your employees' data is out there, being traded? Security awareness training is a big one. We'll never get anywhere with tools by themselves. Humans are the weak link. And unless you are training them and updating them and doing it regularly, they're going to click that link. They're going to leave their, computer, open on the bus. And it's not a one-time event. That's what we've learned. Take your annual training. It's every month, little fun reminders to them. Take a little course. And then the big one I think that we're seeing huge adoption on is, it's got a lot of names in this world, right? It's kind of the alphabet soup. Managed detection and response. So MDR, XDR, managed SOC, everybody calls it something different, but it all breaks down to having a solution where data is being collected. It's going to a set of automation and humans that are watching 24/7, that are catching things that have gotten through, and all that marketing, alphabet soup. All of those services are built for one thing and one thing alone: to catch a compromise and stop a small problem from becoming a very big problem. They don't stop, like the marketing is like, oh, defend attacks. And no, they're all about somebody got through. You don't want them in there for long periods of time, kind of like your house. A burglar, they got through the lock on the door. Did they get caught, on the front steps after they walked in, or did you catch them, after they've been upstairs going through your jewelry, for, 3 days? That's what all those services are about. And all of them are now what I call, commercially reasonable for a small to mid-sized business. You're seeing MSPs package them up, have a per user charge, and saying, this is how we do cybersecurity.
And if we take a step back from all the technology that we're talking about today, ultimately acquiring more customers in the growing MSP space is a huge challenge right now. So what strategies should MSPs be implementing to stand out in such a competitive environment in a period of economic uncertainty as well? A big challenge, isn't it?
It is. And so it is there's good news and competition, right? The two big things that came up from the survey is, as you're trying to acquire more customers, what are the challenges? Number one challenge, 47% identified it, lack of sales and marketing. The second one is 23% of increased competition. And I really think the two go hand in hand. We're seeing increased competition because we might not be doing a good job of differentiating ourselves with sales and marketing. Every time I'm talking to somebody, there's 3 or 4 other MSPs talking to them at the same time. So there are things we can do. First is differentiating yourself. If you go and look at websites, just go look at you and your competitor's website. First impression. Don't dive in. What are they about? And most of them right now are, we have incredible customer satisfaction on supporting you. It's all about, we're a better partner. And that's good, but the messages are all the same. So there's no real differentiation. You're starting to see people do it with cybersecurity as a differentiator. Yeah. You don't want increased competition to be a race to the bottom because that kills your profit margin. Great. You got a new customer, you lost money on them. So what we're trying to do to help is really on the sales and marketing side. It's not just, a lot of companies grew on referrals, and that's good, but it's not repeatable. It's not like we're going to go run this campaign and we're going to get 3 new customers. So we have a service that we call Powered Services that is all about sales and marketing for MSPs. So every month we give them 20 new social media posts, 3 new landing pages, 4 email templates, 2 videos, and they don't say Kaseya or anything. They're all about your MSP and a branding exercise around, usually in security, around awareness. Not that we supply endpoint detection and response that catches 70% of threats. It's, hey, this is why cybersecurity is important. This is how you can help do it. So we kind of bundle it in a box, but it's not one time with a data sheet with your name on it. It's every single month giving them content kind of done for them to start posting and start educating and nurturing the people in their area usually.
And on the topic of delivering value, especially regards to break fix, co-managed IT, M&A, etc., I'm curious, how can strategies like these be used to, again, maximize profitability and efficiency within that MSP space?
Absolutely. The three things we saw, not unexpectedly is, break fix, co-managed, and M&A as strategies. Break fix is tough. It's really a business. A lot of people keep taking it because it's work, but it's not repeatable. By its very nature, they're not willing to sign a contract with you. So you might have work this month and none next month. It gets cut first in an economy because it's discretionary income, or discretionary spending. So, a CFO is going to sit there, or a managing director, and say, all right, what don't we have to pay for? And it's right there. That's going to get cut. Their external marketing team's going to get, marketing agency's going to get cut. So, and it has, when in the survey, it has the lowest margins because, again, it's all custom, it's ad hoc. So everyone has really over the past, 5+ years moved from a break fix model as most of their business to a managed service. What we're seeing now are really two things. M&A and co-managed. Co-managed being, I'm going a bit upstream and I'm not trying to be their whole IT department. I'm maybe taking some services for them. And we're seeing a real transformation. We saw how many organizations, we just did a similar survey to small to medium organizations. Instead of to the MSPs. It hasn't been published yet, so nobody heard this on this podcast. But 80% of them said they're looking to outsource one or more IT services to an MSP, and that's up from 64% in 2022. So that's a big jump. And you're starting to see that because, and I'm sure MSPs are experiencing that, as the economy gets tighter or uncertain, they're looking at, we're not going to replace our entire IT, but we need more help on cybersecurity. So we're going to outsource this and co-manage it with the MSP. So that is a big trend that is happening. And so make sure you have the ability to co-manage, not just wear your entire IT. And we saw in our report, we saw about a third of companies get up to 25% of their revenue from co-managed environments. And 29% of them get between 25% and 50% from co-managed. And so that's actually shifting up. Years ago, it was nice to have, but it wasn't a main focus of the business. So it requires a little more when you're co-managing. It's a great opportunity, bigger deals, bigger environments, great chance to expand services. But if you don't have processes and automation, then letting someone into the environment and what's behind the curtain can be very scary. So really that's where integration, automation, and those things really come into play to be able to offer co-managed services, because they're going to become really a part of your team and you have to have your act together. But we see it on both sides. The MSPs are doing more of it, and the survey that hasn't yet gone out from the SMEs are saying, they're doing a big jump in what they're planning to do with MSPs.
Love that. And as the Chief Strategy Officer and General Manager of Security Products at Kaseya, I'm going to ask you to take a little gaze into your virtual crystal ball now. So how do you see these trends evolving in the coming years? And what do you think MSP should be prepared for in this future?
I kind of think of it, we saw it with the pandemic. What does the office look like in now, 2 years, 4 years, 5 years? It's all about security in the cloud. A lot of, I know that's not earth shattering, right? We've been saying going to the cloud, but if I look at most offices now for SMEs, if they're not some type of service business, it's an access point and maybe a printer, right? And everybody else is connected to, certainly Microsoft Office or Google or Dropbox or Salesforce or Net, everything is a cloud application. And so I thought, when we talked about cloud, originally it was more moving their servers to Azure or AWS. And now it's really about applications, right? Every application that was on-prem now has a SaaS offering. So how do I make the user experience great? They're going to have a laptop and they're going to have Wi-Fi. And then how do I make sure that it's not just about servers or workstations? How do I have a play with SaaS applications? Because all of their, obviously all of their productivity is on 365 or Google Workspace. But what about their other applications that they run their business on? Get to know them. The big ones of Salesforce and HubSpot and NetSuite. But what else are they using that may be in their space? And so you're going to have to secure those applications just like you've secured, Microsoft 365 or their server logins. So I would say, and we're seeing it with MSPs, 100% focus on cybersecurity and look at what the office is when most of their applications are not running on a server that you manage for them. It's running as a SaaS application. How can I play in that? And there are many places to play, just like you've done with Microsoft 365. How do I secure that? How do I onboard them? How do I offboard them? The other big thing we're seeing in the news, everybody's talking about AI. It is, I've never seen something go that fast. 90%, I think, of announcements are not really AI. Suddenly overnight, everyone has AI because of ChatGPT. AI is, I look at it as not replacing tech, but another form of automation. In fact, a lot of automation leverages it. And where will that play? In the IT space, I think a lot of it, you're seeing it in chatbots today, the early beginnings. So how can I get and help with an intelligent chatbot helping to resolve or automate a lot of the incoming calls that take a lot of time? Or, I go and ask a question, it can go and take action for me and focus the existing humans on the exceptions or the work that has to be done besides creating a new account, resetting a password, setting up, a new domain, all of those things. I think it's going to help scale the business. We've already been doing it for years with, writing manual scripts. I think what you're going to start to see a lot of the AI for level 1 tasks coming in through a chatbot interface.
Well, a huge thank you for taking the time to sit down and share your valuable insights and what you're seeing out there at the moment. But before I let you go, I'm going to ask you to leave one final gift to everyone listening, and that is a book that has inspired you or means something to you or you'd like the listeners to check out. All I'm going to ask is, what book would you like to leave and add to our Amazon wish list, and why?
I would say it's one I read recently. Our management team read it. It's called The Checklist Manifesto. Ooh. By Atul Gawande. And checklists are something we don't realize, how something so simple as a checklist can make a huge impact, because humans are more distracted than ever. Our tasks are more complex than ever, but simple checklists can have a huge impact. If we think about, you're on a plane. Even today, when that plane approaches the airport, that pilot pulls out a checklist. Yeah. And they say, number 1, flaps are down. Yes. Number 2, landing gears down. Number 4, where our emergency brakes are set. Check. And the other person says check, and they land. We've been doing that since the 70s. Atul is a doctor, and he went out and did looked at all of these problems of surgeries, and they found huge problems of complications and infections, especially in rural areas throughout the world. And they said, you can never fix that because they don't have the skills or that. So they did a pilot program with where they put in a simple checklist before I walk in: wash hands, sterilize instruments, count instruments. And on the way out, count instruments, close suture, and they check off. They reduced complications in these rural hospitals from a simple checklist by 40 to 50%. And it was just amazing. And he goes into, how can you apply this to businesses? And I was just amazed at little things. And we're going to onboard a new customer. Here's the checklist. We're going to send a new bill. Makes a huge difference. I'd recommend everybody read it.
Wow, the Checklist Manifesto. I will add that to our wish list. I'll be checking that out myself as well. Sounds incredibly intriguing. And for anyone listening, just wanting to find out more about Kaseya, some of the topics we talked about today, maybe even check out the report that we've referenced. What's the best starting point for everything?
The best place is if you go to Kaseya.com, there's a resource button right on the top navigation. In there, you'll see the MSP Benchmark Report. We do a lot of surveys, things like that, a lot of great information about Kaseya, but also the third-party surveys we do and industry data. So I'd recommend you check that out at Kaseya.com.
And as you said, this report drives home for me the importance of automation and integration to make MSPs more productive, efficient and profitable. We covered so much there, from cybersecurity and integration, and so much scope for improvement. And I'm going to be checking that book out as well. But more than anything, just thank you for your time today and sharing your insights. Thank you.
No, thank you. And thanks for everybody for listening.
So a huge thank you to Mike from Kaseya for sharing his invaluable insights and also guiding us through the findings of that 2023 MSP Benchmark Report. It certainly helped me understand the importance of automation, cybersecurity and integration, and also for discussing the challenges and opportunities in the industry and the need for more sophisticated security solutions, not to mention adapting to the changing landscape of MSPs in this increasingly digital world. So I hope this conversation enriched your understanding of the current and future state of MSPs. And remember, whether you're an MSP, a small to mid-sized medium business, or a tech enthusiast, staying informed and adapting to changes is the key to success in this rapidly evolving tech landscape that we all find ourselves in the middle of. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on anything we talked about today. So email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, just at Neil C. Hughes. Let me know what you thought. But that's it for today. So just a big thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.